IVM.
Hello and welcome to the Habit Coach podcast. I am Ashdin Doctor, your habit coach, and today with me for the second time we have Zarina Poonawalla. And if you haven't caught the first episode, please go listen to it. She's a fantastic coach. She is the host of the Empowering Series podcast on IVM and our studio. So please go check it out. Check out her podcast as well. Zarina, welcome back to the Habit Coach podcast.
Thank you, Ashdin. I'm excited about this second episode.
No, isn't it interesting? So, guys, what we're going to be talking about today is celebrating rock bottom. If you've been listening to our Thursday episodes, you'll notice that there is a certain theme that's coming up, which is understanding what rock bottom is and celebrating it. This is because I suddenly realized that my most empowering, if I can use that word, Zarina, change was when I realized that I was at rock bottom and there was nowhere further to fall. All I had to do was anything that could get me to move upwards. And many of us are at some form of rock bottom in our lives. Or we know people who are at rock bottom. And it's so important for us to create this positivity around it instead of being sad around it, being stressed about it. Celebrate it and let's start using. So, Zarina, rock bottom. What does rock bottom mean to you?
Rock bottom, for me, the fact that we're talking about rock bottom means it's a foundation. Nothing's harder than a rock.
Yeah.
So you start off from there and you make your foundation strong and you build upwards, just like you said. So that's what rock bottom means to me. And of course, we all had our own, right?
Yes. And you said it so nicely. You can start your life from scratch, creating that foundation that you always wanted to. Very often, we build a building on a weak foundation and wonder then why it tumbles. Right? True. If you get your foundation in place, you can actually build a very, very nice, strong building. And I'm sure you must be working with people as well who are going through various rock bottoms in their life, right?
Of course. I mean, I think that's that vulnerable space where people come to you, Ashton. And you know how Brené Brown, she talks about embracing your vulnerabilities and your emotions. So the idea of being vulnerable, you hitting your rock bottom and then rising up from there, that's the whole process, right? I mean, that's exactly what life is. How else do you expect it to be?
Yes.
You can't be in the clouds all the time.
And we might go through multiple rock bottoms because we have to learn from each one. And people keep saying, Ashdin, look at this. I was here just a few years ago. Now I'm back here. It's so useless. I don't know what to do. And I say, no, it's not useless because now you have all the experience starting with something. So,
absolutely.
Using that, you can carry on and continue. Zarina, do you have a rock bottom story?
Of course I do. And I think I hit my rock bottom when I was much younger. Of course, we have a lot of rock bottom stories, but I will talk about this one because this one will resonate with a lot of the millennials, people looking for body image, people looking to understand themselves. I used to basically, Ashton, I used to have a lot of acne, lots of acne on my face. And all of my college life, partially my school life, 10th grade onwards, and then college, I was very conscious about it. So there was a lack of confidence, definitely. I was always good with public speaking. My friends always thought I had the gift of the gab. All of that was all right. But within, how you feel, just feel like your appearance is just not right because you have all these pretty faces, flawless faces, and you seem like you're just bursting out from everywhere. Now, what happened is I'd taken up a job for a couple of months with an airline academy where I was just doing an internship, keeping myself busy through college. And I was the receptionist there. Okay. So I must have been about 17, 18-ish. And this I clearly remember. I used to sit at the reception. Now, airline, air hostesses are supposed to look a certain way, certain heights. They're supposed to be.
Right.
So obviously I was already out of place, but luckily because of maybe the communication skills, I got that bit. It started off there, and a couple of months down, the boss comes and says, Zarina, we're moving you inside and we're making you a supervisor, a consultant. I was so excited and so happy, and I was like, I've got a promotion. That's pretty cool, from reception to a consultant. So then you're taking down everybody's details and all that. And a dear friend of mine, a colleague at the time, she said, what happened? Why are you so happy? And I said, I've been told to, take up this and I'm so excited. I'm so happy. She's like, they want me to go and sit there. I said, why? Why are they demoting you? Now I was a little naive because obviously I didn't have that much experience. And she said, no, actually, because of your skin, they don't want people to see you at the entrance. And that's why they're moving you in. Yeah, they're not moving you in because you're better, but they're moving you in because I am a little more flawless. And that shook me, it shook me completely. And I really didn't know how to react. I came home and I must have cried and cried and cried because obviously, you're young at that point. Skin and body and all these things really make a difference to you. And it really matters. And I was devastated. I was absolutely shattered. But then I remember, having conversation at home. And obviously my parents have been extremely supportive. Family has been lovely in that sense of things. And I told myself that, okay, you know what? My parents said that you've been asked to go in the room. In your head, you were promoted. So pretend like you were promoted. And do the best you can. And that's exactly what I did. So I landed up bringing in more students rather than sitting and taking more calls. I landed up bringing more profit to the company and selling more of those packages or contracts. And they were like, just keep considering that this was your promotion. Don't think of it as they didn't like how you look and that's why they took you away from that place or that, entrance. And that changed me, Ashdin. That completely changed me. Of course, my skin cleared out with time, but then my skin was never a problem in my head as it used to be then. And I worked as long as I wanted and then I quit the job. But obviously, I did give them a good amount of sales before I left because when I went into that consulting room, I knew how to speak to people and that worked. And so I knew that with whatever face you have and however you look, if you have the talent, you have the skills and you have a positive mindset, nothing can stop you from growth. So this is important to me because, you'll end up meeting people. For example, if you're heavier, bigger, you're balding or you've got a skin issue, you'll end up, people meet you, Ashdin, and they will always say, Arey, you've put on a lot of weight, huh? Oh, you've lost a lot of weight. What happened to your skin? You should try this. You should do that. Put this oil, try this. Oh, you're looking so dark. Why don't you try to use Optanum? The point being that a person looks at themselves in the mirror every single day. They know what they look like. They don't need you to come and give them these 100,000 different reasons to believe that they're not good enough. And that's the world for you. The world will always be that way to some level. There are people who encourage you and there are people who bring you down. And what I realized at that point is that rock bottom to many means failure. Failure. Failure of being something, failure of achieving something, accomplishing something.
Jobs, relationships, all of it.
A lot of it. And for me, failure is the mother of success. If you failed, then you've birthed success. If you haven't failed, then God alone knows what you've done with your life. So that moment of considering where, that consideration that, hey, you know what, I had imagined that I'm promoted. I'm going to imagine that and work. That motivation that I got from my family at that point, I think that kept me going. And that rock bottom was because I realized that my skin, my looks, and all of those things will work for me for some time or not work for me in some places. But my talent or my skills will always work for me wherever I am. And then there was no looking back. And then eventually you'll end up getting into a, profession where you're constantly seeing people. People are seeing you. Now you're on video and all of these things. So it's quite fascinating. It's been a journey of its own, I feel.
You said so many interesting things, Zarina. One important thing I want to bring out and talk about is the whole fact that saying that what can people not take away from you? Correct? Like I went through this as well. I was saying that, all right, if I have to create this life, I have to make it future-proof. So I used to call it future-proofing. Correct? Right. I was like, how do I create a future-proof life? How do I create things that cannot be taken away from me? So maybe my knowledge cannot be taken away from me. Maybe, even if knowledge happens, some Alzheimer's happens, something happens, all right, what else can I not take away from me? Can I create content like this that cannot be taken away from me? What are these aspects? So how do you start slowly thinking about future-proofing your life and making sure that what you're creating has a 5-year horizon, 10-year horizon? Because that's the plan that we have to think about, especially when we're at rock bottom thinking our foundation. Imagine you start off by building a 4-story building, and then when you're on the 4th story, you're like, nahi, abhi 12 chahiye. Now the foundation wasn't built for 12 story, correct? So even like you gave the perfect example of rock bottom and foundations, you have to think about skyscraper, Burj Al Arab, where do you want to be? And then create that foundation from there onwards. Like you said, if you had just thought about it and saying that, I'm at rock bottom, I just need to take care of my skin. I need to take care of my skin. I need to take care of my skin. And had, gone around in circles around just your skin, none of this other stuff would have been possible. Correct?
Totally.
Instead, what are the things that I can do that are not related to this rock bottom moment that I can develop? And that was one aspect of your success. I'm obviously putting words in your mouth because this is my interpretation of it, right? But I think this is an essence that people should pick up, saying that don't focus on the stuff that got you to rock bottom. Focus on the stuff that you can do now that you're at rock bottom and get excited about it.
Exactly. Just the fact that, it goes to show that, because I constantly talk about reflection and knowing who you are, to some level, understanding your nuances. Maybe at that time, obviously, I didn't know about coaching and I didn't know about all of these things. But Ashdin, I think I was always a positive person. And to have considered that this is a promotion, then to be shattered that it was not. And then to have a family tell you that, hey, you know what, you thought it's a promotion? It is a promotion. Go for it. So to make sure that you hold on to the positivity at your rock bottom of any sort is very important, because that takes you forward. If you have already decided that they made you feel bad, but you will make yourself feel worse, then, then it doesn't help. But the idea is you've got to be fair to yourself.
And how do people create that positivity in themselves? How do you cultivate positivity?
You can't stop thinking. I mean, there are very few thoughtless Zen people. I consider myself one of them, because somebody asked me recently, like, how do you handle so many problems in a day, or, so many sessions? I'm pretty sure you get that question too. And my answer usually is, it's not even positivity. I'm just thoughtless after a point. I can switch on and switch off. Now, I know that's hard to achieve. Maybe with time and practice, people will get there. But we're usually not thoughtless. People are thinking, they're overthinking, and they're ruminating. Right. So there's a lot of negative thinking processes, which leads you to being demotivated, and then you don't know how to handle your rock bottom, so to say. So, Ashdin, I think what you must do is replace a thought. Instead of trying to think positively, instead of trying to think positively, don't try to think positively. Replace your thoughts with another thought. That thought must be a positive one. Because when you try so hard that, oh, come on, it's okay, think positive, nobody's going to listen to you. So instead you tell them that, okay, what is it? What are you thinking? So if somebody's like, this is the worst case scenario. I'm like, okay, this is the worst case scenario. What's the best that can happen in your worst case? And they're like, oh yeah, okay, now this doesn't look so bad. I'm relieved. So replacing a thought, a negative thought, with a positive thought, replacing your can'ts and don'ts with, I can try, perhaps, let's see, let's figure this out.
Correct.
That changes the attitude, and that's where you build your positivity.
Yeah, I love the let's see attitude. Dekhte hain, right? In fact, one of the best ways of going through life, I think dealing with stuff also, is chalo dekhte hain. Let's see what happens. And chalo dekhte hain, for people who don't know Hindi, means let's see, right? And the whole idea is, what will happen? It pushes you out of your comfort zone whenever you say that. And being out of your comfort zone is a space of growth, like we've often heard and spoken about on this podcast as well. So let's see is a very nice attitude to try cultivating, and making sure, obviously, that you are minimizing the downside, but let's see and then take it forward is a great way of exploring new things. Like, I think did I discuss this on your podcast or not? When I was at my rock bottom, I gave myself 2 goals. One was to fail at everything. So that pushed me out of my comfort zone, because stuff that I was winning on means that I'm not pushing myself out of my comfort zone. And the second thing was to do all of these things that we should not be doing. Whenever my brain says, are you sure you should be doing that? Do it. Right? Because that throws you out of your comfort zone like nothing else. So,
absolutely.
Figuring that out also helps you figure out what can you do now from your rock bottom. Like I said, there's nothing worse. You're here already. Chalo, now let's see what we can build up from there.
And that's the thing with your let's see attitude, Ashdin, what people should add on there is, what's the worst that can happen? See, as long as it's not disease or death, everything is manageable and controllable, even finances. even at rock bottom. There's always something that you're going to come back from. So if it is not a demise and you're...
And many often at rock bottom, you don't have any finances. So
exactly. For most people, that's rock bottom, right? So yes, it's true. But I
that's
feel...
rock bottom, right?
Let's see what's the worst that can happen and go forward. मतलब क्या हो सकता है? What is the worst? उसमें से भी कुछ अच्छा निकल जाएगा. So, I think that's why the positivity gets cultivated. And I think it's also a matter of your surroundings. If you're surrounded by people who are constantly talking about negative things. For example, if I can just share this quickly, I was talking to a client of mine and she said that people are leaving the organization. And she's like, I don't know what we're doing wrong. They've not cut salaries. They have not, been unrealistic at all, even through these times. I said, I understand. 2-3 of them are slightly in the younger, age group. And I said, you know what? They're at home. Now the families have different ideas of how they are working. Father will say, how much are you making? Why are you only making so much? Oh, mother might say, oh, you've got so much knowledge now. Why don't you start off on your own? Or somebody will say, okay, how much are you going to work here? Let's start looking for boys. Maybe after the pandemic, we'll get you married. I said, so you see what happens is when you are staying at home and working, these are some disadvantages. Everybody has a say in what you're doing.
Yes.
And everybody wants to make sure that they have an input about your life. And that not necessarily may be good for you or maybe great advice or maybe positive. So that's where you need to know, for example, this is just an example that has recently happened. And when I put this forward to my client, she was like, this makes sense. Because this even happens in my house. Like, why are you running a business? Wow, what's the need for you to run a business? It happens to me too, She said that this happens to me as well. Now that I'm working from home, my family is asking me these questions too. I said, so this is exactly why you're supposed to surround yourself with a certain kind of people as well. And if you can't surround yourself with them, make sure that you are passing on the positivity instead of taking the negativity, at least.
Yes. Out of your culture, right? You can't create a company culture by somebody sitting at home, which is one of the big problems that most businesses are having right now. And this ties in so well with what we were discussing in the previous podcast, which was your 4 A's, right? When you're at home, you can't do any avoiding. Everybody's in your face, correct? So how do you start dealing with that? And guys, if you don't know what I'm talking about, please go listen to the previous podcast because we discussed this 4 A's in depth there. And it's a brilliant concept that Zarina uses with her coaching clients. So please do listen to that. So Zarina, when people, start this upward trend from their, rock bottom, and when you're working with your coaching clients, how do they maintain that trajectory up, right? Because many people start off and say, ab ho gaya. And then before they know it, they're back down at rock bottom. I've noticed this trend of up, down kind of waves taking place in people's lives. How do you maintain that upward trajectory so that people start, actually going from the 4th floor to the 12th floor, like we were talking about in the example previously?
Right. So, Ashdin, one of the things that is extremely important at this point is the commitment you're making to yourself. All right. What is the commitment you're making? Is it short term? So when you're thinking that, okay, you're one of those people who doesn't have consistency. See, people who don't have a lot of consistency, they hit more rock bottoms. If you go to see, if it is, let's say, take a serial entrepreneur, and a serial entrepreneur is constantly having these highs and lows, then he has to kind of look deeper and see, am I being consistent? Could have I avoided this rock bottom? Could have I made sure that this happened or didn't happen? You understand? Some rock bottoms are self-inflicted. Now that is where you understand that consistency and commitment become very important to make sure that it's an upward trajectory, like you mentioned. And along with that, there have to be those short-term accomplishments that one has constantly. There has to be this understanding that you will hit rock bottom in some way or the other again. If your business is doing fine, you might hit it in your relationship. If the relationship is doing fine, something else may be a little bit of, let's say a pain point or that area for you, a derailer, if I may say. So you have to prepare them to realize that consistency and commitment, if you have these two things and you can nicely spice it up with a good attitude, then irrespective of how many rock bottoms you hit, you're going to come out of it, you're going to grow from it, you're going to get it stronger. from there. So automatically, the person starts to have a vision that, okay, I don't want to do 4 floors, I want to do 12 floors. Now I want to do a couple of more stories. So the mindset of consistency takes you a couple of places. Through this pandemic, that's what I've learned. Companies which have shut down, companies which have stayed, people that have managed to stay in their relationship, people who've realized that I don't want to live with this partner anymore because we can't even take each other in the same house for so many years. I've just realized, Ashdin, that what everybody is talking about through this whole pandemic is being consistent. Like pull through, just pull through, let this pass, just hang on. And that hanging on bit with commitment really takes you upwards.
Very interesting. So there is one which is the consistency part, right? And then looking at consistency and using that. And guys, I know that you all are listeners to the Habit Coach podcast. So what are habits? Habits are nothing but creating consistency in your life, creating those actions that happen every day, making small changes that fructify probably years from now, months from now, but making that consistency a part of what you're doing. So one is consistency. The second is knowing that there will be ups and downs and celebrating each time there's a down as well. And the final one is keeping an eye on where you want to go, right? I think, when you have that as your intention and you keep tweaking it, changing that intention from time to time, you realize that you might have to change your foundation as well. And in that process, you can keep that upward trajectory going. Lovely. Last thing about rock bottoms. How long do you think it should take somebody to get out of it? Do you think there is a timeline like that? Do you think it happens as soon as there's a thought that enters somebody's mind saying, aha, now it changes? Is there an aha moment that we can speed up so that people can actually, say that, why am I doing this for the last 2 years? Aha, let me do something now.
This is somewhere where if you don't mind, I'd like to bring in mental health as an important aspect.
All right.
Because if you stick around at your rock bottom for too long, it affects your mental health. And
very nice.
That is why you must try. There is no timeline, of course, but you must try to want to get out of and go up from that rock bottom as soon as possible. And I think sometimes those eureka moments or aha moments don't come to you. You've got to bring them to you. You've got to tell yourself, you know what? I'm not doing this to myself. The whole idea is that you be fair to yourself. Be just. Be good to yourself. If you want to be good to yourself, you will want to not be in that misery for very long. And automatically you will act upon it much, much faster. You'll take action much faster. So I'm kind of putting this in terms where most people in today's time understand it, Ashdin. Try to move out of your rock bottom before it affects your mental health very, very profusely. That is what you must keep in mind. Right? So the minute you know that now I can't take this anymore, now I am not being able to handle this stably, get up and get on with it. That's what you do.
Superb. I love that answer. Because, as soon as you hang around there for too long, mental stress starts taking place, mental issues start taking place, and it becomes even harder, it compounds. So the first step is realize that you're on rock bottom, celebrate it and do something about it. Don't hang around there.
Rock bottom is beautiful.
Rock bottom is so beautiful.
It's beautiful. It's like, how there is this story about the stone which was converted into the idol of a god. Okay.
No, tell me.
So this story, I don't know, I read it somewhere in one of the books because obviously it's our thing to read a lot. So basically, I think there was the story where, there were 2 stones and one was kicked. And the one which was kicked, he was very upset and he saw the other stone being picked up. And that stone got picked up and this fellow felt very bad, the one who got kicked. And he said, oh God, I was kicked but you were picked up. But then slowly he realized that there is this sculptor, he's carving on that piece of stone. So the one which got kicked, that stone turns around and says, oh God, thank God I got kicked because at least I'm not going through so much pain. You're constantly being beaten upon, you're constantly being carved into. This looks very painful and I'm glad I'm not going through that. And this other stone which was picked up and which was being sculpted into, it was taking all this pain, going through the process. And he said, it's okay, I'm sure there's something good in this for me. And a couple of days later, the stone which got kicked realized that this was turned into a beautiful God's idol and put inside a temple. And he realized that after all that, this is a stone which is going to be worshipped. It is a stone which took all that pain and went through that, chisel, and constantly went through that change and formation, and finally became something that people are going to come and look up to. The idea is that, do you turn around and take that temporary little bit of a hassle and feel, thank God I got done with it, and never have or become a role model for somebody, never have inspiration, never do something? Or is it that you actually, go through some pain and become something, allow people to look up to you? It doesn't necessarily have to be an idol in a temple, but it's just that your life's experiences allow you to help others to realize that you can be carved into something more beautiful.
Lovely, lovely. So each chip of that sculpture's hand was the pain that was inflicted, but it was a creation that was coming out. Correct? And embrace those little chips that take place in your daily life or in your life as a whole, because you don't know what beautiful sculpture you might become. Love it.
And Ashdin, I'm just going to add here that use this analogy as you being your own sculptor and you being a stone. You don't have anybody else coming to sculpt you there. So you better be your own.
Nice. Whack yourself. All right.
Yes.
All right, please don't whack yourself. But understand that these are the changes.
Take that away.
Okay, so Zarina, thank you so much for coming on the Habit Coach podcast. I love this. Thank you for sharing this personal story with us. I know it's going to inspire a lot of us because we are all going through some form of rock bottom in our life. And, the way that you explained on how to get it out, it's your foundation after all. Start using that as a foundation, not as I've lost everything. And then start building up, because you can always create your life at whatever age you are, whether you're 14, 13, 85. So start thinking about it that way. Zarina, how can people reach out to you? How can people get in touch with you?
So I'm available on Instagram. My Insta handle is Zarina Poonawalla. Twitter is Zarina Speaks. And Facebook is Zarina Poonawalla. You can reach me all these places. And and if you listen to the IVM podcast and the Empowering series with Zarina, then you might be able to reach me via there too.
Oh, perfect. Lovely. So guys, please go and listen to her podcast. It is absolutely fantastic. My father and I were on her podcast about a year ago. So that's a fun episode. Please at least definitely go and listen to that one.
Yes, please.
Yeah. And then, you're going to be inspired by our conversation to go and listen to far more. Zarina, thank you so much for joining us on the Habit Coach podcast. It was, truly special and an honor to have you here.
Ashdin, thank you for having me. Long due, but I love this conversation and I hope I've done some justice to your podcast, because I know you run a fantastic one. So all the best to you, and thank you for having me on your show.
Thank you. My pleasure.
If you like this podcast, don't forget to check out other interesting podcasts on the IVM network. You can listen to us on the IVM Podcast app or ivmpodcast.com. You can also follow us on social media. We are at IVM Podcasts on Twitter and Instagram. If you want to reach out to me, I am Ashdin Doc on Twitter and Instagram. You can find lots more information on my website, awesome180.com, or check out different content on my YouTube channel called AWESOME180. That's Awesome180.
I hope you enjoyed that show. I'd like to thank our sponsors, Intel, for coming back to us. We love our sponsors. If you'd like to be one of them, do reach out. So really cool week on the network this week, right? Started off with a bang. Abhijit Ganguly was on Cyrus Says. Funny comedian. I think you guys will enjoy that. We had Dimant Parekh on Advertising is Dead. Dimant's the founder of Better India. Govindraj Athiraj is also on Uncle Please Sit this week. That's a really fascinating show which they talk about fake news. On the Habit Coach, there was a crossover event with Aditi Surana from Absolutely Right. I think you definitely enjoyed that. And last but not least, definitely a show I'd love you all to check out. We have a new show called This Round Is On Me. It's hosted by Gauri Devi Dayal. If you remember, Gauri and I worked on a show together called The Kolaba Cartel a while ago. Fun show. If you haven't checked that out, do check that out. But this is a show where she's talking to a lot of different people in the food space. Her first guest is Harsh Mariwala, legend in his own time. I think you'll really enjoy that show. But with that, we hope to see you again next week.
Advertising is dead. Yep, you heard me right. Advertising is dead. We're all in the content business now. Let's not call it news, TV, radio, etc., etc. It's all content, and we're in the middle of this weirdly exciting phase where all the borders and lines that have been drawn over decades has been swept away by this lovely thing called the internet. We're a show where we don't dwell on just the stuff that is now, but rather the wider stuff about advertising, media, content, and the whole goddamn circus surrounding it. Tune in every Tuesday for our weekly unboxing of the mystery box we used to call advertising. I'm Varun Dugirala, co-founder and content chief at The Glitch, and this is my new podcast, Advertising is Dead.